Well, welcome, Jason, in Canada.
Jason 2.0 from the good place.
Hi, Matt.
Where all the good people live.
Hi, Matt.
Howdy, howdy.
I'm honored to talk to you. As long as we continue to have a conversation about the basics, how we progress with morality. We repeat arguments for generations, which is needed, but we have little conversation on what to do next. I have an example, an idea of how we might do that if you need.
I lost you. Can you still hear him? Is it my audio?
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
What's your example?
Okay. Oh, so did you hear my question there, or do you want an example there?
No.
Okay, so the example would be, for example, Peterson has changed the conversation when it comes to theists turn on theists as what it means to be a theist. And if there's a lot more deists out there, we could welcome them to a common ground if we could just kind of build one. We build so much time going over the basic arguments again and again. You talked about your 3-value comparison method. There's Sam Harris's landscape. But we don't ever build something like that so that we can be like, hey, here's something that you could say that you believe in as a basic moral, so that we don't have theists going, well, atheists believe in nothing.
Are we talking about the definition of morality again?
I don't know, because first of all, you're referencing Jordan Peterson, I'm assuming, and I don't give a fuck what he has to say. And then you're suggesting we should build bridges with deists, whereas deists aren't atheists. And while they may be reasonable on some things, and they could be secular humanists to some extent, I'm happy to have them come along, but I'm not going to kowtow to deistic ideas, because that's stupid.
No, and I'm not saying we should cow down. I'm saying that we could build a simple common ground. We could label a ground that we could try and go on. As long as
I don't know, what is it you're trying to label? What is it you're trying to label? Because I think we've already done this in the sense of talking about secular humanism. We're talking about well-being. What more do we need to do?
Okay, so if we go with atheists, and that's a label that isn't a label. That's one of the very big problems. We spend so much of our time.
No, it is a label. And by the way, Jason, we are over time and you're fucking losing me quickly. Are you going to talk about morality, or are you going to talk about atheism? Because you say it's a label that isn't a label. Yes, it fucking is. Talk about morality. We're running out of time.
There's not a lot of substance, but there's a lot of words.
I agree that it absolutely is a label. I'm saying that it's one that doesn't have any kind of definition for morality. So Christians will try to be like...
That's why I asked why you were talking about it. Would you just talk about morality? Because you're wasting my time now.
So if we agreed on a common ground as, say...
You think that there's not an understood definition of morality amongst just humans in general? Because it sounds like you're saying atheism doesn't entail a definition of morality as a tenet of atheism. Sure. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Atheism is the answer to a question, and that question isn't what is morality. It is there a God? So I'll agree with that. Sure, fine, whatever. But it sounds to me like you're saying that there isn't, but you can... But it sounds to me like you're saying that there is not a unilaterally sort of agreed upon concept of morality just amongst humans in general. And I think that I would argue against that, because most legal systems have similar kind of principles to them. You can argue that some of them aren't as moral as others once you understand the definition of morality, but you're using that definition of morality as the grounding in order to make that argument, right?
Absolutely.
Which is usually something like harm reduction and increasing of thriving. Those are things that are inarguably, I think, part of the definition of morality universally. I don't think that you or Jordan Peterson or Matt or anybody would disagree with that. So that definition does exist irrespective of any theology or lack thereof. So it's not up to atheists to create, it's reinventing the wheel, and it's solving an unnecessary problem. So the better conversation to have would be, how do we become more moral, and how do we convince other people to be moral? Not, can we agree upon a definition of morality? Because that's answering a question that's already been answered.
So let me ask this.
Okay.
Let me ask this. there's a deist, somebody from Westboro Baptist Church, a generic nondescript theist, and me. And you say, if we can just find common ground, what's the common ground between us?
So the common ground is exactly what she was just saying. Like it's as unfortunately as simple as really just giving a simple definition to common sense. Like I know we can't define it completely, but we can give the very basic common ground decency of exactly what she was talking about. Like we look at suffering first, right? So we go and we give 3 values of suffering, and we want to avoid the most suffering, like Sam Harris's landscape. That we want.
I'm sorry, but I asked for the fucking common ground. Westboro does not care about human suffering. This life is like dirty. This life, listen to me, is like dirty rags. It's a place to wipe your feet. It's the next life that matters for Westboro Baptist Church. So what you're saying isn't common ground.
So what we need something to try and separate what is the common ground for people that we can agree with and have a reasonable conversation with, and who are the ones that we can't agree with, right? Like I'm not a fan of Peterson, but he's pulling a lot of people to just have some basic decency, and suddenly those people are thinking that it's okay to
Is he? Trans people would disagree with you. Trans people would unequivocally disagree with you. 100%. So would anybody who's my aunt passed away last week of COVID. His anti-vax stances and anti-mandate stances, I would disagree with those because I think that they probably directly contributed to the people around my aunt deciding that they didn't need to get a vaccine because it was their personal freedom, even though it infected her and she ended up dying. So I don't agree, nor will you hear me agree, with Jordan Peterson, of all goddamn people, bringing people together to increase the moral fortitude of the world.
Meanwhile, as the only one of the 3 of us who's actually sat down and had dinner and conversations with the man, I'll chime in that he's a nut. But all you seem to be saying, Jason, is now we need to make a list of the groups of people who we could find common ground with and the ones we can't find common ground with, and then find common ground with the groups of people we can find common ground with. Well, congratulations for your solution to everything. What is it?
It's not a solution to everything. It's a it's a point to start off with. It's a place so that we can see the good in the other.
Do you think that nobody's ever thought of this before? What is the fucking common ground, and who is it common with?
Everybody that can agree that suffering is bad.
Thank you for your tautologies. I have zero interest in people who try to solve problems with tautologies and fucking banal. Of course we need to find common ground with the people that we can find common ground with. That's diplomacy 101. When you get to diplomacy 201, call us back.
I don't even get what that was. We need to get people to be more moral by. Well, I don't understand. Maybe I'm lost. I don't even understand.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous to suggest that. You know what we really need to do? We need to find common ground with the people that we can find common ground with, and we need to identify the groups that we can't find common. Well, no fucking shit, Sherlock. Some of us have been here trying to do that for a long time.
And I'm not a fan of Jordan Peterson, but he's the best. he's doing so much good work. What? I don't understand.
Thank you for that insightful comment that nobody's ever thought of before. Gosh, I never thought about finding common ground.